Good morning, everyone. This is Blaine Pardoe, award-winning and best-selling author of the Blue Dawn series, Land and Sea series, and several other different genres. And welcome to Writers Fix Problems. Today, we're going to be joined by Steven Lampley. Um, I met Steven a few years ago at CrimeCon, where I was a guest speaker speaking about a true crime book that I had written on the Colonial Parkway murders. Prior to my session starting, I actually slid into his session, which was all about how to detect lies. And I got to tell you, it was incredible. As a father of two grown children, I wish I had had that information that he shared years earlier. It sure would have helped me and would have made their lives a lot more miserable. let's talk a little bit about the book. The book is How to Catch a Liar. And it's a small book, but I got to tell you, it's well worth your investment and time. And we're going to talk a lot about some of the techniques and stuff that's in this book. Let me give a quick review of this. Stephen hasn't heard this, but it's not going to be bad news, I don't think. This book is quick, but an important read. While Lampley has instructed law enforcement for years on how to detect lies, he has provided a meaningful framework to his studies in the book To Catch a Liar. Before you write this book off as something that's just for law enforcement, let me tell you, you'll be able to use this professionally at work and in your personal lives. We are bombarded by lies every day, constantly. And being able to spot them is kind of a critical measure for your ongoing success. Now, his work is something that I've been able to incorporate into many aspects of the work that I do and how I interact with others. And it's really important. That's why I wanted to bring him on. Even though this book's been out for a long time, I still keep it near my desk because it's useful to reference. Now, I will preface this. I have no doubt that this book has broken up probably more than a few marriages. It has probably caused a lot of fights, etc., which is actually proof as to how good the book is. So, with that, I'd like to welcome Steven Lampley. Steven, thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Blaine. I appreciate it. It's wonderful having you as a friend. Uh, really glad to be on the show today. Thank you for inviting.
Oh, thanks for coming on. I love this subject because nothing's more fun than catching somebody in a lie. Let's talk a little bit about your background before we jump into this, because you've got a really cool background and a lot of interesting experiences that kind of feed into this.
Uh, well, I was born at a very early age. Actually, okay, I'm sorry. Uh, yeah, I don't know how far back you want me to go or how in depth, but I'll give you the Reader's Digest version of where I was and how I got here. Uh, for several years, I was a banker. Uh, I was sitting behind a desk, shuffling everybody else's money while I'm not making any. I had the quintessential uh, corporate coat rack, the corporate plant in my office, and the secretary, and I doing all the motions. And I just, I didn't know it at the beginning, but I was not very happy. Um, and a couple of other things happened, and I thought, I want to do something different. So I walked out of that and went to work for the Birmingham Police Department and attended the police academy. I know that sounds like a logical, everybody does that. They go from banking right to law enforcement. But that was what I did. And I found the police academy a lot harder than military basic training, actually. But I loved every minute of it. And I had a lot of, I spent 21 years in law enforcement. And I had a lot of opportunities. And I was the person who, if they had a special assignment or they had a special training, I didn't care what it was. I volunteered for it. Even if I didn't like it, I wanted to know about it. And I felt like it would help me on the street and then later on as an investigator. So, I mean, I volunteered and I had all kinds of opportunities because of that. And one day I was riding around in a patrol car, not bothering anybody. And I got a call from the chief, which never happens. chief was on the radio and wanted me to come to the station. I'm like, oh crap, what have I done? You don't ever get called to the station. Hey, you did a really good job. That never happens. You get called to the station because something you screwed up on. I'm like, I don't know what I'm racking my brain on the way to the station trying to figure out what it was that I did wrong. I couldn't come up with anything. So I go in and I very quietly tiptoe and I walk around the corner looking at his office, hoping he's not there. And he's sitting there. He looks up, motions me to come in. And what really rattled me was when he said, come in, close the door and sit down. Oh crap. This is one of those closed door sessions. I see. What career am I going to do next? So he proceeds to tell me, he says, this is just between you and me, no one else. Don't even tell your wife, no one else. It never leaves this room. He said, I want you to put together an undercover operation all by yourself. Nobody else is to know about this. And I want you to learn whatever you need, whatever equipment you need, whatever training you need, wherever you need to go, you let me know. I've already got the funding set aside that I can access and get you anything you need. But I want you to set up an undercover operation, a lot like To Catch a Predator on television. He said, and the reason I want you to tell no one is because we don't know who we might catch here. Valid point. So I went into that mode, and I did all the research, and I contacted some officers out of town and sort of shadowed them a little bit who were doing the same thing. And we got, back then it required special software. We were able to get the special software in which to record some of the stuff. And in the span of 90 days, I had identified 87 predators, not quite one a day. And it was literally overwhelming. Well, we went on and on, and through that program, we flushed out a fugitive from justice in Canada who drove up actually to meet me. That particular profile that I had was not as a 14-year-old girl, but I was a adult male, 32, whose wife, who made all the money, she left me and my daughter alone, and we had no money, and the premise was I was renting my 10-year-old daughter out, and he responded to that, drove up with the money and all the stuff, and after we made the arrest and took him to the station, and once I knew his real name, we ran him through the computer, and he was wanted. He was a fugitive from justice in Canada, wanted for 900 counts of possession of child pornography and sexual assault of children. So we took him off. Anyway, I did a bunch of things, and I retired. It was time. I did 21 years, and I retired. And there were some friends of mine who knew of some of the cases like that one that I was involved in. They said, you should write a book. I said, that's never going to happen. That's just forget it. That's not going to happen. And they kept on. So I wrote this book, Outside Your Door. And then I wrote How to Catch a Liar, and I put the How to Catch a Liar out there first, just sort of test the waters and see how the whole thing worked. Well, it took off, and it was responsible for some radio interviews, namely one in Seattle, where that led me to having my own 10-minute segment of radio show. Then it went to 30 minutes, and then they gave me an hour-long show, which then was transferred to KCAA in Los Angeles. It was primetime on NBC News affiliate there, and it got to be a lot more than I ever wanted. So anyway, that's pretty much how I got to where I am now. But I'm now starting to cut back on some of it. So,
well, that's good. Yeah, this book, it really hits home on a lot of fronts. My wife read it. And it's one of those things where she's like, "Wow, this would have been so useful against our children." Yeah, because she's like, now I look back at conversations I had with them, and I should have known right then and there that they were bullshit, I guess. Yeah,
it's funny you say that. I had a lady who ordered the book wrong about the beginning, and she had ordered the book, and then she had gone to the mailbox that very day and gotten it out and opened it up, and she set it on the kitchen counter. And she was getting ready to cook supper. The kids were now coming in. It was like after 3. Kids were now coming in, and I think she said her daughter, I believe it was, came in feeding her some BS. And she looked at her, knowing darn well it was BS, because she also attended the seminar, and knowing it was BS. And she looked at her daughter, and then she looked down at the counter. And of course, her daughter looked down to see what she was looking at. Then she looked back at her daughter. She said, "You want to try that again?" Her daughter said, "Okay, all right." And so the book has actually worked without anybody having read it. So,
well, it's interesting, and I want to dive into some of the points in the book. And I'm not going to reveal all of it because obviously, I encourage people to pick it up. But you open with the misconceptions of lying, and there are a couple that come up almost immediately. So I was wondering if you might want to talk a little bit about what some of the most, or at least what the most common misconception is about liars and lying.
the biggest thing in 70, I think 70, I forget the stats that we know on this, 70 some odd percent, I'm going to say 73% of the population, and I don't really know where this comes from. I don't know how it originated, but it's around 73% of the population worldwide believe that if someone will not look you in your eyes when they're talking to you, that they're lying. While that may be true, that's not a very accurate excuse me, that's not a very accurate, matter of fact, it's a pretty lousy indicator to use to determine if someone is lying to you. For instance, someone, let's say with Asperger's, is not necessarily comfortable with looking somebody in their eye. We've got somebody with may have PTSD. They also may not be comfortable looking somebody in their eyes. You have somebody that's really, really, really almost, I won't say backwardly shy, but severely shy. They won't look you in the eyes. And you have people that, particularly women, but some men, who have been in abusive relationships. Excuse me, I'm sorry. And they won't look you in the eye. So what you have is you have people running around believing that if someone's not looking them in their eyes, that they're lying to them. That's not necessarily true. Maybe they're experiencing one of those categories, and it's unfair. Not only is it only fair to the person that the person's talking to, but it's unfair to you because you think this is true, and it's not necessarily the fact. On the flip side of that, and I know we haven't gotten into this yet. I'm sorry. Is that you have people who are, for lack of a better word, professional liars. Sociopathic, who lie perpetually, and they're pretty good at it. And they may not, or rather they'll sometimes will stare at you on purpose, fix a stare. And so you're thinking, okay, this person's not looking away, so they must be telling me the truth while they're lying throughout their teeth. So if somebody looks you in the eyes or not, it's a very weightless indicator.
Oh yeah. Well, the same thing with crossing the arms. I've heard that from a lot of
Exactly.
people that, oh, look, he's very defensive. And it's like, yeah, I cross my arms all the time because it's a comfortable position.
Yeah.
Or if I'm cold,
Mm-hmm.
you walk into air conditioning, you cross the arms, and it's
We don't walk around like zombies on the streets with our arms out at our side all the time. Sometimes we do cross these things.
yeah. Well, it was really interesting. You point out that it's not enough for a person to trigger just one of these kind of things that you look for in lying. What you really kind of look for is a pattern in that. And I was wondering if you might be able to expand on that a little bit.
Sure. We call that clustering. If I ask somebody a question, I'm watching them, I'm listening to them very intently to see what I can see, hear what I can hear. And I'm looking particularly to the first 5, maybe 6 seconds into their answer. and I'm looking for 2 or 3 or more indicators. I'm looking for a cluster. One is if I talk to somebody and, for instance, they push their chair back, which is an indicator of lying, and that's all I get. I mean, I'm not going to discount that, but I'm not going to put a lot of weight in it. Maybe they got tired of sitting up. We talked about the arm crossing. Maybe they just got tired of sitting up, and that was just the time. While that is an indicator, I'm looking for 2 or 3 more. Now I go on and I ask another question, and I get 2 or 3 indicators. Then that's what I'm going to pay attention to, particularly.
Yeah, it's really interesting too. You talk about the whole. You have a chapter. It's on the flight or flight responses that people have. I was wondering if you might give kind of a quick overview of that, because I found it very interesting to kind of read through that part.
Well, when a person is threatened, the body responds oftentimes autonomically. I mean, yeah, we recognize there's a threat, such as being approached by somebody who's wanting us to tell the truth, and we're not wanting to tell the truth. So there's a threat there. Maybe we're implicated in the question. Maybe we were part of what happened. Maybe we robbed a bank. I don't know. So our body responds to that. Sweating, our blinking rate may change. Our breathing rate will change. Our voice, because now we're tense, our vocal cords are tightening up, and it's going to be a higher pitch. There's several things to look for. Fidgeting, and those are uncontrollable things. I have a lot of people that tell me, well, I just won't look away when I talk to you, and I just won't cross my arms, and I just won't do. Well, that's great, but you're not stopping your autonomic system. I will catch you. You may be able to mask 2 or 3 indicators. First of all, you can't mask all of them, and you're not masking any of the autonomic ones. So, play the game, whatever. I got you.
Well, I'll tell you, this one was one, and I almost pulled up a bunch of videos, but I didn't want to have Watcher have to pull up 20 videos of it. You talk about the importance of the dominant hand, or the dominant side of the brain that the person uses, and how that comes into play with this, and how police, when they're sitting down to interrogate somebody or to question somebody, how they determine what that is, and how that comes into play. I was wondering if you can kind of do a very short overview of that, because it was really interesting.
Well, particularly in an eye, and this relates to eye movement. There was an FBI agent I watched several years ago on a video, older gentleman, I don't remember his name, and we've all heard the phrase, the eyes are windows to the soul, and they truly are. Their eyes will tell you things, but the mouth never will. And when I'm interviewing or interrogating someone, I need to know the dominant side of their brain. I need to know whether they're right-handed or left-handed. And there's several ways to do that, but the easiest way I found to do that, particularly in an interrogation session, sorry, is to excuse myself from the interrogation room, go out and get a bottle of water, come back and approach my subject straight away, not from an angle, from one side or the other, straight on. Hold the bottle of water out, center line of his body, and see which hand he reaches to grab the bottle of water with. That's not 100%, but that pretty much tells me whether this person's right-handed or left-handed. With that information now, I know which eye movement I need to pay attention to, in which manner, and how they move their eyes, because now I know what dominant side I'm looking for. You have someone who is right-handed, say, and I ask a question, and they maybe lean back a little bit, or they're thinking, and they look upper right, I'm fixing to be fed a line of BS, because they're thinking of an answer that doesn't exist to tell me, or a lie. Now, if they look upper left, that's telling me that they're trying to remember something that did occur, or the truth. Now, it's just the opposite with somebody that's left-handed. If I talk to a left-handed person and they look upper left, they're fixing to lie to me. or upper right, they're probably going to tell me the truth because they're trying to remember the details of something that did happen.
Well, and what's amazing about that is that's not something you could fake real easy, and I encourage everybody, if you go up on YouTube, just pull up police interrogations and you will see almost every single one of them opens with the police officer offering them a bottle of water or offering them a cup of coffee. And you realize that is done very deliberately now. And it's done to try to crack open a little bit of a window on this particular person. One of the things that I've heard, and I heard it this weekend, because my wife and I watch On Patrol Live. It's a live police TV show where police are encountering people on the streets, and it can be on any number of different crimes. And you talk about the singing of the word no. And we were watching it this weekend, and the police asked somebody a question. They're like, "No!" And they were going into it big time. And my wife went right off the bat. She goes, "That person is so lying." She just knows that that's a thing. It's interesting, the vocal patterns that when we're trying to deceive, come into play. And I was wondering if you might talk a little bit about that.
Well, when you're, wow, I don't know where to start on that. When you're lying and you're lying, not only does your tone change, and that has a lot to do with the autonomic system as well, because it's going to change because your muscles are tense. Your syntax, your word per minute rate, your vocal tone, the elimination of contractions, the use of pronouns. There's a whole bunch of things that I'm listening and watching for when somebody's talking to me. Now, this, and I hate to say this, because when you're learning, if you've never used any of these techniques before, this is not, and I tell this in my seminar, I believe I told it at CrimeCon, please, 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 please don't go out and get this book or watch some videos on YouTube, and that's another whole story there. Don't read it and think, okay, I'm an expert. You're not. You've got just enough information to be dangerous. Okay. Don't read the book through one time, go to your wife and accuse her or your husband or significant other. You're like, yeah, don't do that. This is something that takes a while. Read the book, read it again, go out and watch people. Get on YouTube and watch the Bill Clinton video. Watch the, I can't remember her first name, the Downs video. Watch those videos and you'll see these indicators that I'm telling you in the book on these videos. Bill Clinton is, wow. Yeah. You're going to see textbook examples of lying, and then go back and read the book again. You can't read the book and go out and call people liars. You're going to get in trouble.
Why don't we do that, Watcher? You just pulled up Bill, and we've got one as well. We'll take a look at, which is Chris Watts. But let's take a look at this, because you mentioned the pronoun piece, and I think that's a real important one. And we've got two good examples of that, especially with Clinton. Let's take a listen to this familiar one. Oh, can't hear it.
Give me just a second. Let me see what's going on.
All right.
I'm personally okay with not hearing him.
Oh, I'm not letting this one go.
Did I say that out loud?
Yeah, it's okay. But you mentioned that it's interesting that around pronouns, and let's talk about that while Watcher kind of works through the kinks a little bit, because it comes into play a lot of these interrogations.
Sure. And then the one we're about to see, Bill Clinton, and I, based on Bill Clinton's video and his immediate correction of realizing what he had done, it appears to me that he was been coached on how not to reveal lies, because he realized what he had done and immediately turned around and corrected it. And in this video, we'll see that he actually changed.
All right, let's see if this works. It's pretty quiet.
I can't hear it.
Huh. All right, let me figure out what's going on.
Yeah, and it's interesting because what your book says is, and what you've talked about is, instead of using a person's name, they'll go to use a pronoun.
Mhm.
So they don't say, if you confront somebody and say, "Did you kill Jim?" They don't say, "I didn't kill Jim." They'll say, "I didn't kill him."
Him.
They'll diffuse it by they'll distance themselves from the
Exactly.
victim.
Yeah, they're trying to pull themselves away from the actual. I'm sorry. Here we've got a video here.
No, still not got it, Watcher. A quiet Clinton.
Huh. Well, I'll pop back out and I'll be right back in. We'll see if that fixes it.
Okay. But it to me it's fascinating because what Bill comes out and does is, I did not have sexual relations with that woman. He
Mhm.
immediately goes there, and then to your point, he corrects himself really quick. It's almost like a catch.
Yeah.
And he comes back and mentions her by name.
And that sort of tells me he's been coached on how to talk without, because he would not have known that. I don't think he goes around and reads books on how to catch a lion. Maybe he does. I don't know. Maybe he read my book. I don't know.
He's a very personable person, and he's got a great warm personality. And that was also kind of a change to him because it was very abrupt and gruff. It wasn't his normal tone of voice or anything else. So I found that video fascinating. Watchers also got a video of Chris Watts doing something similar when the police confronted him. He killed his wife and children, and when they confronted him, it's interesting how he responded to that. And it's a very similar type response where he avoids mentioning their names at all, even though the police put those out. They don't. He immediately just refers to them as them. And avoids that.
And he does a lot of base shifting, hard swallowing. And there's when I watched, and again, haven't done this 21 years. I don't watch a lot of these shows, but I did watch the interview they did with Chris Watts outside his house. And I thought to myself, okay, this guy either knows what happened or did it. And then it was maybe a week later, he confessed. It was pretty obvious he was involved.
All right. I think I've got it fixed.
Speech. And I worked on it till pretty late last night.
Can you hear it now?
Yep.
I want to say one thing to the American.
He already has one lying indicator already.
Listen to me. I'm going to say this again. I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never. These allegations are false, and I need to go back to work for the American people. Thank you.
So talk to me. What did you see there that we all now know was lies? What did you see?
The first thing he did was he pulled his lip in the bottom. He pulled his bottom lip in. That was the first indicator. Then, of course, the relegating Monica to a pronoun, that woman. And then his use of the finger to try to convince rather than convey. And I don't know that it showed on this particular video. It may not have run long enough, but as he turned from his right to left, he had a smirk on his face.
Oh, I never noticed that.
Yeah. So there were multiple indicators. In other words, then the smirk is a smile of, I really put one over on them, of self-satisfaction that I've gotten away with this.
Well, Watcher, if you could pull up the Chris Watts video that I sent you, and it's got another good example of the pronoun being employed. And it's very interesting to watch this one as well as to how he discusses his children, and impersonalizes them.
Is it used in Colorado? I'm not even sure what is the death penalty. Okay. I mean, like, if these kids are not alive, like, there's nothing you could do to to cope with that.
Yeah. So he refers to his kids as these kids.
These kids, yeah.
You know, and
Exactly.
by the way, if you go through that entire interrogation, there's so much there.
Yeah, he's not a good liar.
No, he's not.
He wasn't a good liar from standing outside his. That matter of fact, the video, not the interrogation, the interview that I saw from the media was outside of his house while the police were still there, and I thought, they just need to go ahead and make an arrest and bring him in because he knows something. But he's a horrible liar.
Well, I'm trying to avoid revealing everything in your book because I want people to buy your book, okay? Because it's worth picking up. I was watching On Patrol this weekend, though, and there was an instance where a woman came out and she goes, "I swear on a Bible, I didn't do this." I was wondering, because you make a point about talking about invoking your deity or invoking the Bible. I was wondering if you might want to expand on that a little.
Well, and let me preface everything I've said up till now, and I'm going to say is that just because someone does one particular indicator doesn't mean that they're lying. That may be what they've always done. They may have always done one of these or two or more even indicators. It's just something that they do in their mannerisms. That doesn't make them liars.
True.
That's why clustering is so important. But I'm sorry. What was
she said I swear on the Bible I didn't do that.
I forgot. Anytime, well, not anytime. Most times when somebody says, "I swear to God, I swear on the Bible," okay, what did you do? Just go ahead and tell me, because you're about to lie to me about what you did, about what you did or didn't do. Most times, but again, maybe that's just something maybe they learned it somewhere. But yeah, if somebody says, "Well, I swear to God, I didn't take that money." Well, you probably did take that money, or you probably did do what you just said you didn't do.
Well, you mentioned in the book aggression towards the questioner can be one of those indicators. So how does that come across? Because I'm having a hard time. I did see it in a couple of videos that I looked at, but it's hard to kind of picture that. And you've been through a lot of interrogations in your career. So how does that manifest itself in ways that people would understand?
There's a couple of there's something called that I call aggression, which is basic aggression, more like anger, and then there's something called contempt, which is extremely dangerous to the interviewer. I'll talk about the aggression first. If let's talk about a corporate environment. We'll get away from law enforcement some. Let's talk about the corporate environment, where let's say somebody is stealing time. They're goofing off, or they're staying in the bathroom for 30, 40 minutes, whatever. And they get brought in by HR to question, why are you not as productive as everybody else? So you're in the bathroom 45 minutes, you're taking longer breaks than normal. And instead of saying, "Yeah, okay, I'm sorry," or just flat out denying it, which could also be anger, they may subrogate the offense on them to someone else. Well, so and so in accounting does this all the time. They get real aggravated, real agitated that they're the ones in the hot seat, and they want to make it somebody else's fault. You're not doing that to them. You're letting them get away with it. Blah 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 blah, and it becomes a more defensive technique. The other flip side of that is someone who has contempt. If they start getting a twitch in their lip, or they start getting these fixated eyes on you, and in the book, I won't go into all the details. In the book, it explains contempt in detail. It's time to get out of that conversation. You're in a potentially dangerous situation where they could get up and render you bodily harm. So if you see a contempt situation, just, "Okay, I got it," and back out and leave.
Well, and that's an important piece to this. This shouldn't be viewed as a book that's a guidebook on how to interrogate. This isn't that. It's really just to give you some great indicators and if you cluster those things together, it gives you a general idea. It doesn't prove anything. It just helps guide you a little bit more in whatever kind of discussions you're having. And most of these discussions, I think this is most appropriate, obviously, in the corporate environment, in many respects, and I've used it that way. It's been very good. Your book references how some people focus on insignificant details when lying. And I was wondering if you might talk a little bit about that too.
I'm sorry, focuses on what? I missed that.
Insignificant details.
Oh.
They highlight things that, that seem weird. And I've seen this on a number of different discussions where law enforcement's have been engaged.
And this is quite often used by teenagers as well. Where were you? Why were you late last night? Well, instead of saying, well, we just didn't come home in time and, we were held over, we get this big statement about, oh, well, we went to the new restaurant downtown called Bill's Shake Shack, and did you know they have great milkshakes and the fries? They're great. We had some French fries, and they start going on this big diatribe of information. It has nothing to do with the question that was asked. And teenagers are particularly fond about using this technique to try to deflect the answer to the question, that we were just out getting drunk, whatever.
Well, another one that I liked in the book too is how sometimes it's when people deflect by asking a question back to the interrogator. Watcher, we have a clip of our president, and I kind of want to go to that, just play it up through the part where he's talking, and then get Steven's reaction to it.
Welcome back. Well, President Biden is laughing off any allegations that he was involved in a $5 million criminal bribery scheme back when he was vice president, as well as all of the other evidence from bank records. Watch this.
The bribery allegation, Congresswoman Nancy Mace says there's damning evidence in the FBI file that you sold out the country. Do you have a response to the congressional Republicans?
Where's the money? I'm joking.
Mr. President.
Yeah, when he responded that way, I dug out your book, okay? Because he responded back with a question, and then he kind of deflects it even further and says, I'm joking. So when you see stuff like this, and you pointed out when the presidential news conferences are a treasure trove of people lying. And by the way, that means both parties. It wasn't.
Oh yeah, it's not relegated to one party. They both.
Yeah, I mean, they really, it's really there. But so when you see something like that, what sticks out to you? Was he deflecting or?
Oh, he was, and he was trying to release the severity of it by laughing it off like it was not a big deal. It's a pretty major deal in that particular subject, anyway. But yeah, and asking a question, whether it's a repeat of the question that he was asked, or to throw another question, he's pausing, he's deflecting, obviously didn't answer the question, and tried to lighten it up, by laughing at it.
Yeah. I mean, the book is fantastic, folks. It's called How to Catch a Liar. And it's a bit pricey, but I got to tell you, it's worth it. Every penny. I use it all the time. I dig it out because you can't watch any press conference, be it by a corporation or anyone else, without using some of these techniques to kind of go, how much are they trying to mislead me? Or are there indications of that? Watcher, I'm kind of curious. You had a statement that you posted up, but did we have any comments or questions from the folks online?
Well, let me check over at Rumble. Why are you so quiet, Rumble? Let us talk to you. So, we had a suggestion for a revision to the show title, which that's not even our call.
Yeah.
No. Just Billy Blogs here saying that he's got Asperger's and a bit of PTSD and social anxiety, and he gets a bit odd and would be screwed if someone interrogated him. Feel you there, buddy, on most of those same accounts. Anyhow, that's about it.
Yeah, well, you raised a good point, Watcher. You might want to go into that.
Sure. So I said, I was just observing your guys' comment about invoking religious things to try and prove how honest you're being, and just how interesting and appropriate it is that we have our politicians swear on in a Bible, and that it was politicians who thought up that litmus test for swearing in as well. That's just deep insights into the world.
No kidding.
Well, in the same light, talking about, I swear to God, trying to make themselves appear to be religious or holier than thou, if you will. We have another indicator of someone who, let's say, for instance, another corporate environment where a dollar was taken off of somebody's desk. And they're brought in to, say, human resources to ask, did you take the dollar from Elizabeth's desk? And you get a response, well, I've never ever done anything like that before. I would never do that. Well, that's BS, because maybe you didn't, but everybody starts somewhere, right? So maybe you've never done it before, doesn't mean you didn't do it this time. So, but they'll try to deflect. Well, I've never done that before. I would never do that when they got the dollar in their pocket.
My son's favorite, we confronted him on something he did. And he said, I can't picture myself doing that. And I was like, what the hell answer is that? I didn't see myself do that. I can't see myself doing something like that. Well, that isn't the same as saying you did it or didn't do it. Yeah. But the kid's a good kid, but there were times where it was easier to catch him on fraud than others.
Well, everybody lies. Nobody can say that they don't lie. If you've ever told your kid there's a Santa Claus, or Easter Bunny, or if you've ever kept a secret about a surprise birthday party, or and not all lies are horrible lies. Some lies are meant to help. If the kid comes up to you and says, Mom, are you planning a surprise birthday party for me? I'm like, what are you going to do? Say, well, yeah, just blow it. And no, you're going to say no and try to keep the surprise. That's not a horrible lie, So we all lie. I lie, and I'll probably lie tomorrow, about something. It just depends on the situation.
Well, you had a statistic that we lie an incredible amount in our lives.
Yeah.
It's amazing, the amount of lying that we do.
Yeah, and again, and I won't go into the book, but there's different kinds of lies. Some little white lies don't mean anything. Some lies have a little bit more substance to them, and then there's outright just criminal denials and lies about what we did or didn't do.
Well, and for folks who don't know it, Steven also writes has written a number of true crime books as well. They're well worth picking up. I think he's taking a break from writing going forward, though, so we're going to miss out on that. But I got to tell you, if you want to really drill into deception and whether people who are feeding you a bit of misdirection, this book, How to Catch a Liar, is a great starting point. It's not the end all for interrogations, etc., but it's a great starting point. Some of the stuff I found on YouTube, some of that stuff isn't really useful. You really have to check the sources. Usually you want to make sure you're getting somebody who's in law enforcement who's posted something about that to really be able to kind of drill into it. Well, Steven, is there anything else you'd like to share?
Yeah, since you said that, let me also back up. Detecting lies is a synergistic thing. You're not just watching their eyes. You're not just watching their hands or their feet. You're watching all of that, and you have to watch it all at the same time while you're listening to what they say or don't say. It takes a while to be able to take all of that in and know what you're looking for.
You know, we did have a couple questions just come in, if you're all right with it, and they're essentially the same question from multiple people. And I had this question as well. So people ask, you know, hey, what if you're ambidextrous, or what if you use multiple hands? But another question that's the exact same thing is, weird question, what if somebody is one-handed but opposite eye dominant, which I've seen in many shooters that I've trained over the years?
Yeah. Well, one reason I say this, when you're doing these interrogations, one thing does not always indicate exact. Okay. That's the reason we use the clusters. If somebody's one-handed, obviously handing them a bottle of water is not going to work. You know, you'll have to do another approach by even just ask him, are you right-handed, left-handed? No, or were you? Or in the case of somebody that's ambidextrous or somebody with one arm, you know, you're going to have to go about it a different way. I will say that detecting lies is not an exact science. Anytime you're dealing with the human brain, which is what we're dealing with, you can have innumerable different outcomes. These are guidelines. These are mainly designed for the masses, if you will. So you're going to have, and then let me back up. You're going to have people who are, you know, professional liars, psychopaths. They lied about the lie they lied about. And a lot of times they believe these lies. So what we've talked about today, and mainly in this book, is just a beginning. It's a beginning phase on what to do if you're always going to have special situations. And you have certain, I guess I should write another book on these special situations, but this book is just mainly the beginning, the basics. And I also want to add, because it is a book, there's no video in the book, obviously. So what I would suggest is that people go on to YouTube, watch the Bill Clinton video, go back and watch the Chris Watts interview that the media did while he was standing outside of his house. There's innumerable indicators in that video. And then one more, go to I can't remember the lady's first name, but her last name was Downs, where she killed her children. You'll see the Duchenne, the non-Duchenne smile. You're going to see all of that. Go watch these videos after you read the book. Maybe read the book again, go back and watch them again. I would very strongly suggest that, like Blaine said, stay away from the videos that are not from someone who, you know, has done this or studied this for a living. And most of the videos that you see on YouTube are indicators. You know, somebody said, well, here, watch this video of these indicators. That's great. That's wonderful that you've got a video of these indicators, but the people don't need that. They also need to know how to assess those indicators. You can watch indicators all day long. I can have somebody sitting in two different rooms and ask them if they took the money off the table. Both of them will tell me, no, I did not take the money off the table. One of them is lying and one's telling the truth. You have to know how to assess what you see and hear, not just know what it looks like, because they can act the same. One of them's telling you a lie. You have to know the difference.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that's helpful is to watch those types of things where you know someone has lied. It's not very useful if you're trying to kind of develop these skills to watch something where you're still not sure if the person's telling the truth or not. Mm-hmm. It's easier to go to a Bill Clinton type thing and go, look, we know that he lied here. So now let's dissect that. And even you caught things that I didn't, the little smirk at the end where, you know, when he turned away, I was like, okay, I missed that completely. Mm-hmm. I will also say, if you're going to watch the police interrogation ones, try to get it where you get the camera angle to look at the entire body of the person. if you get them where they're just from the chest up because they're at a table, you're not quite getting the entire vibe of what's going on. And a lot of the stuff in the book talks about body language and things along those lines and positions that, so you've got to be able to look at the whole picture. And I think that's important as well.
Yeah.
Well, Steven, is there anything you want to plug, or how can people get a hold of you if they want to?
My website, Steven with a V is in Victor, StevenDavidLampley.com.
Fantastic.
I have all my information on that website. And I will, since you said plug, far be it from me to miss a Gene Simmons opportunity. I do have my first novel coming out in November. It's a Reader's Digest version. It's a serial killer investigation case by a retiring old cranky detective. Some of the characteristics I will have to say are me from my experience, but I'm not the alcoholic that I portray in the book, though. But it will be coming out in November. I don't have an exact date yet. It's gonna be somewhere around 700 pages, I think. It's finally finished.
Ooh, that's a big one. Well, fantastic. Well, Steven, thank you so much for being on. It's always great talking to you. And I'm really looking forward to seeing your new book. We'll have to have you back on after it comes out.
Oh, I'll let you know. I'll send you a copy.
Fantastic. Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Folks, if you're still on with us, make sure you click the like button and the subscribe button, and we'll talk to you next week. Thank you.